Oh god, yeah, I meant to have a Fallout video out this week. Huh. Well, if you want, that's fair enough. So, can you beat Fallout 4 with the paddle ball it is? The paddle ball is a joke weapon if you couldn't figure it out. It does an interesting amount of damage, and can only be bought at the Nuka arcade for 300 tickets. This means I will need to head to Nuka World as soon as possible to properly start the run. Considering the DLC recommends you don't even think about heading there until you're almost level 30, that's most definitely going to present some problems. But I'm sure it won't be that bad. Right? Starting things off, I use all one of my brain cells to craft a stupid name, may as well, as it's some of the only levity I'll be able to get for the next 6 hours. If you are looking at my stats and thinking, what the hell is he going for? I too would like the answer to that question. From what I understand, the only way to increase the paddle ball's damage is via upgrades at weapon benches. None of the weapon perks increase its damage. So really, the only special that matters is intelligence, so I can grab the science perk, as well as being able to level up slightly faster. To jump the gun a bit, luck was a terrible investment. Yeah, crits are good and all, but tell me, does that really matter when the crit does a whopping 2 damage for most of the run? Leaving the safety of the vault, I just make a beeline straight for Nuka World. I could have prepared myself by scavenging for food and supplies, but I'm expecting to get one shot regardless, so I figured it wouldn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Agility would have been a wise special to invest in, given that I'm planning to run away from the majority of my problems for the time being. You know, when I say that, I always imagine I'm worshipping some sort of benevolent time god. Anyway, I arrive at the entrance to Nuka World, and because I don't want an Assaultron's combat whisk shoved straight up my ass, I head around the left side gate and straight into the metro tunnels from there as to avoid the welcoming committee. I talk with Harvey, power up the train, and next thing you know, we're in a world of pain. That's not entirely accurate if I'm honest. You may be wondering how I'm going to get past the gauntlet considering my bones are essentially made of glass. The simple answer is, I'm not. Instead, I'm just going to walk right up to the exit door that is locked on the other side by a chain, and thanks to positioning myself just right, I can see the chain through this crack in the door and then activate it, removing the chain and allowing me to skip the gauntlet and the boss fight with Coulter. Out into the wide open world of Nuka, I first grab some new clothes to blend in with the local Neanderthals, as well as making sure to steal all of the pre-war money from this skeleton's duffel bag, as I will need it to exchange for tokens. Speaking of, I begin running straight for the arcade to see about getting our weapon. Due to skipping the entire gauntlet and boss fight, the raiders at the park are all mostly frozen in place. Some people will talk to me and offer me side quests, but I cannot progress with the DLC's main storyline, or fast travel for that matter. The latter of which is going to pose a massive issue, but for now that doesn't faze me as I am too focused on earning tickets. I specifically need 500 tickets for the paddle ball, and rather than waste my time and yours by playing these games legitimately, I instead cheat by grabbing the basketball and just giving it the old up and down stroking motion until the buzzer blares and I know it's finished. Depending on how well you do, this method tends to reward you somewhere between 700 to 1000 tickets. So, more than enough for the paddle ball. So, that seemed rather easy. Alright then, time for the bullshit. The arcade's prizes are on a weekly rotation. The paddle ball is not there currently, so I need to go and find a seat and wait around for the next week to have even another chance at getting it. Long story short, I eventually got the prize, but you may notice that I'm not really celebrating. Well, that is simply because, even though I now have the paddle, the ball is in fact its ammunition, or to be more precise, the strings are. How do you get strings? Well, I figured you'd be able to craft them due to the sole survivor's obsessive need to atomize and recycle everything he sees, but no. Yep, despite the fact you're able to craft a giant neon sign to greet your neighbours seemingly out of old toaster parts and the adhesive from used tissues, a substitute for string is just far too complex for our character to figure out. So, where does that leave us? Why, we must simply win them from the arcade. 50 tickets for one piece of string that may or may not be in rotation for that given week. With ammo that rare, you would expect the paddle ball to be a weapon of the gods, something that maybe has damage comparable to a fat man. No, it does one. Like, each hit does a single point of damage for each ball and string used. This is where it should become abundantly clear that it's obviously a joke weapon that you're meant to use the odd time for a quick laugh before switching out to something much more useful. Now, you can take the paddle ball to a weapon workbench and modify it to do something, but then you realise all the actual good damage upgrades require ranks 2 and up from the science perk. Perks that are unobtainable until level 17, 28 and 41 respectively. So where does that leave us? Almost no damage and ammo that is so ridiculously tedious to obtain that it's honestly not even worth the time investment, as it would take you a few hours of real time to even get 100 pieces of string, which would barely take out a gang of level 1 raiders, if that even happens before you decide to hang yourself with the string. The cherry on top of all of this, because yes, we are still not done, is that since I cannot fast travel and because the monorail is out of power, I cannot leave Nuka World until I have finished off Coulter. Which, as I unfortunately found out, is impossible to do with my current setup without running the gauntlet, because even should I enter the Coulacar's arena where you would normally exit from, due to me skipping some triggers with Coulter, he will now be completely invincible during the fight, and not even a physical object, as everything will just phase right through him. I even tried to use one of the squirt guns from the arcade, and that did nothing either. There is a way to bypass this, but it requires power armor. So I started over again, only this time I made sure to grab some materials from Sanctuary so I could upgrade the paddle ball, albeit slightly to its armor piercing variation, as well as stealing the suit of power armor the Federal ration stockpile. This time when I get to Nuka World I can bypass the gauntlet a different way by using the power armor to glitch through just about any wall. For the handful of you that have never seen this before, it is ridiculously easy to pull off. All you need to do is go into third person, run into the wall you wish to go through, then hold down the button to exit your power armor, and as this is happening, start looking to the left as much as you can. While you're doing this, begin mashing the A button to get back inside the power armor. If you have done this correctly, you will hop out and then immediately back into the suit, but when doing so, you will notice that your character slightly clips into the power armor, and once this happens, once you're in the suit, you'll just pop right through the wall. Now, I didn't need to do this here as I could have just opened the chained gate like before, but I just need you to know about this as I will need to use this a few times going forward. Since I have started over, this of course means I have to get all those tickets again, but I have somewhat grown numb to the concept by this stage, so it can't really hurt me anymore. I get a few strings while I'm here as I might as well, and then I figured what else have I got to lose, as I may as well go and see if I can get past Coulter. This is where the power armor comes into play. Other than it giving me the necessary protection from becoming Coulter's plaything, it also allows me to glitch through the wall and hit the trigger that shackles Coulter back to our mortal plane and allows me to hurt him. Or at least so long as I use the squirt gun. You all saw this coming from a mile away. Of course you can't beat Fallout 4 with the paddle ball. You need the water to even be able to hurt Coulter, and I can't beat the game without getting past him once I have the weapon. Look at me talking like this fight went my way. Of course it bloody didn't. I am, I think, level 2 or 3 at the moment, and he is probably somewhere in the 30s with a strong weapon and armor that is most certainly going to deflect a ball and string. The bash, that really is just a left hook, is a little bit better, but not by much. But it's also going to be my only way to whittle him down enough to secure the victory. I don't even want to think about how long this would take with just the balls. Unsurprisingly, Coulter makes very short work of me and my toy, so it's back to the drawing board, by which I of course mean browsing the Fallout wiki for some ideas. The best I could come up with was that a random Protectron outside the Grandchester Mystery Mansion, for some reason, has 100 paddleball strings on his corpse. You cannot buy them from him, and you cannot pickpocket them from him. They only appear once he is destroyed, because of course they do. Normally, I wouldn't even bother talking about the fight because, you know, it's a Protectron, they're supposed to be weak. I stress, supposed to. If I so much as even thought about getting outside of his bitch slapping range, he would shoot me with a laser that, no joke, would kill me in just a few shots, even with my power armor. I should mention, to compensate for the missing pieces, I'm also wearing some Disciples armor. Some that was won from the arcade, and some that was taken from this random disciple who was just dead outside of their base whenever I arrived. But even with those extra pieces, the lasers continued to rip right through me. To come out on top, I had to make sure I was constantly running into the ticket taker and bashing him with the paddle fist. This was the best way to make him favour the slaps. Sure, I'm still getting hit, but it's either that or I get disintegrated, so I will take my chances with the bludgeoning. The punch-out eventually takes us outside the booth, where I then finally end the fight and can retrieve my 100 paddleball strings. Now I just need to run back to the Coulacars, which if I'm being honest is a lot more difficult than I initially thought. When I do make it back, rather than run in right away with just 100 pieces of string and a dream, I figure that if I'm going to outlast this war of attrition, I am going to need more healing supplies. So for the next 20 to 30 minutes, I carefully check every area and container in the center of Nuka World to grab everything that will help stop me from bleeding out. It's mostly food and, unsurprisingly, variants of Nuka-Cola. I'm not complaining, mind you, those different flavors of cola heal quite a lot, not to mention Quantum, which is not just a full heal, but at my current level, almost acts like temporary invincibility with how much health it recovers. I then top off my supplies by grabbing a handful of performance enhancers. It is a raider base after all, so there's no shortage of medics, buff out and psycho. As prepared as I physically can be, what with being trapped in this raider cola-infused limbo, I glitch my way back into the fight with Coulter and get ready for one of the longest battles I've ever had the displeasure of taking part in. If you're curious, the fight lasts a little over 16 minutes. Most of it boils down to me getting as close to Coulter as possible, taking down his electricity shield with the squirt gun, and then circling him with the paddle ball and either using some of my limited string to do damage, or just bashing him with it. If I can say one good thing about the actual firing of the paddle ball, it's that most of the time whenever someone is hit with the ball, they actually do get stunned as if it was a melee attack, despite it being faster and costing ammo. So if there was a way to somehow get a reliable supply of strings, it could be somewhat useful. But in a fight like this, it doesn't really get me very far. Even with the armor piercing upgrade that triples its damage from 1 to 3, the balls still barely tickle Coulter inside his electric metal shell. It's kind of like a longer version of the encounter with the Protectron, just sticking as close to him as I physically can and baiting him into hitting me with the butt of his gun as opposed to filling me with lead. As you might expect, a lot of the fight was also spent in the Pip-Boy applying and reapplying buffs as well as taking swigs of Nuka-Cola in order to survive. Despite how much time I took preparing for this, 6 hours, and how long the fight itself lasted, there's not much I can talk about. I approached, bashed and paddled, healed, and then rinsed and repeated for a quarter of an hour until I was finally rewarded for my efforts. I did make sure that the final hit came from one of the paddle balls though, had to add insult to injury of course. As soon as he's dead, I take the arms, legs and helmet from his power armor and put them on my own frame. I would have taken the torso as well, but it injures people if they get too close and, well, we don't want to make things too easy now, do we? With Coulter dead, I skip through Gage's dialogue, go outside, and then fast travel back to the Commonwealth, ignore the egg beaters yet again, and then haul myself back to Sanctuary, and can now finally figure out how I am going to progress through the rest of the game. Well, first of all, I replaced the armor piercing ball mod with one that has razor blades glued to it. This causes bleed damage, which can stack, and will therefore be a lot better in the long run. However, the issue still remains, actually fighting with the thing due to the string problem. Here's where we stand. The strings are far too tedious to get legitimately, but at the same time, I really don't want to just bash everyone to death, not because it would be boring, but because I have done that before. Some of you are probably suggesting that I just download a mod and give the thing infinite ammo that way, and while that is an option, I don't want to use outside resources to fix something in the game. Now, if there's a way to break the ammo issue in the game, say with a duplication exploit, well now then that's okay, because then I'm just exploiting the game to its fullest. So I run down to Red Rocket, greet Dogmeat, and then bring him back to Sanctuary. Once he is here, I build a very simple conveyor belt that leads straight into a storage container. You can build all of this as soon as you start, by the way. It requires 0 perks and just some basic materials. Once the conveyor belt is powered, simply drop the item you wish to duplicate onto it, and just as it's about to disappear into the storage container, have Dogmeat go and pick it up for you. If done correctly, Dogmeat should drop the item by your feet. Now, the one that he drops at your feet will just be a stack of 1, but not to worry, as another stack should still be in the storage container. In my case, that's 7 paddleball strings. Now, I just take the 7 from the container, drop those on the ground, preferably close to the ones that Dogmeat grabbed for me so that I can see them both, and now you will notice that they both say they are stacks of 7. Picking these up now can sometimes cause the glitch to break, so the best thing to do is quick save and then quit out to the main menu, then load your quick save, and if all is well, you should be able to pick up both stacks and now have the correct total, which for me is of course 14 strings. As you can imagine, this can begin to snowball very quickly. If you would like a practical use for this glitch, I highly recommend using it to duplicate your tickets from the Nuka Arcade. Within just 10 minutes, you can duplicate over 100,000 tickets and turn them in to get that one achievement that you could just not be bothered to sink your time into. Back to the matter at hand, if you're wondering how much string I made, I stopped somewhere around 20,000. That may seem like a lot, and it is, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't have to come back and do this again. And to be honest, despite that much seeming like overkill, it may honestly be needed considering how many rubber balls it takes to put down even the easiest foe. Now the thing is, despite how much I like to ramble on, sometimes more than necessary, I do value your time and my own. And let's not beat around the bush, very few things are going to be anywhere even close to the same threat level as Coulter, so I may be speeding by a lot of sections I would normally cover in detail. But do not worry, this run still had a few tricks up its sleeve, and for those of you that follow me on Twitter, I'm not calling it X, go bite me Elon, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I head on down to Concord first, figured the raiders rightfully harassing Preston would be good paddle practice. While the joke of beating people to death with a ball on a string may eventually get old through my 12-hour playthrough, I will say the reload animation of just spinning the thing never ceased to bring a smile to my face. The bleed effect does make encounters go by faster than expected, at least for now. Kind of wish I had invested in this before fighting Coulter, but oh well. It's a well-known fact that when you abuse a glitch for your own benefit, it's essentially like making a bargain with the devil. At the time, things may be easier for you, but at some point he's going to come and collect, and seeing how I abuse two different glitches, the power armor phasing and the string duplicating, I am in for two folds of repercussions. The first is right now, as no matter what I do or how many times I reload and fully restart the game, Sturgis just refuses to finish his conversation with me. This completely locks me out of the Minutemen's questline. I was planning to side with them today as they can be the quickest, so it's back to the drawing board I suppose. For now I choose not to worry about it and instead take out my anger and frustrations on Wolfgang. It's easy XP, as remember we may be pretty far into the video, but I am still only in the single digits and I need this XP desperately. As I was making short work of the raiders in Concord, I figured my next best stop would be going to the Corvega assembly plant if I wanted to add a few more notches to my paddle. It's all relatively close quarters, so they kinda struggle to escape from me, which is always nice. Even their leader Jared couldn't put up much of a fight. I proceed to paddle through a sea of feral ghouls in Cambridge, but I really don't feel like joining the Brotherhood today, as it's the faction I tend to side with the most. I guess that means via process of elimination I am somewhat willingly siding with the Railroad today. After the ghouls picked away what was left of my armor, I returned to Sanctuary for some quick repairs before continuing towards Park Street Station. Yeah, I'm going to just shotgun this story. Sue me. For your viewing pleasure, I did fight Swan though, which honestly wasn't that bad. Sure, that could be down to my high level power armor, but to be fair, the staggering of the paddle ball kinda comes in clutch when fighting larger creatures. Most of their attacks take a while to wind up, and in that time I'm usually able to unleash enough power from my balls that I can stun them momentarily. This process then mostly just repeats. To give credit where it's due, Swan does have a very quick overhead that can punish me in an instant, but lucky for us he's a good sport and doesn't abuse that ability. I, on the other hand, abuse the hell out of all of my supplies. I want to win, damn it, and win I shall. Descending into the train tunnels, and if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, the Triggermen are basically just low-level raiders with worse armor and slightly better weapons. In fact, I think I've said that exact line in another video. No idea which one though. If anyone can find it, let me know. It'll be funny. Anyway, this all means more balls and more death. I then free Nick, and all is well for the moment. The fight with Skinny starts off a little concerning when he doesn't take any damage, but then it eventually kicks in and I'm thankful I don't have to rely on Nick's Stormtrooper aim to win the fight. The rest of his backup, Darla included, don't pose much of a threat either. Outside, and it's time for my comeuppance, part 2. When me and Nick make it to the surface, everything plays out as usual. A brief exchange, followed by the completion of the Unlikely Valentine quest. Only, I don't get the next main story quest, Nick doesn't move, and anytime I try to speak with him, he just keeps repeating the line about how I knew to find him down in the vault. This part of the story is required. You need Nick to advance, seeing how he is crucial to the start of the quest with Kellogg and the Memory Den segment. Even making my way to his office in Diamond City does nothing, as Ellie just says he has yet to return. Fine, if the game is just going to break from my previous actions, I will just continue to grind what's left of the game's code to dust. I get the key for Kellogg's house, and then use the power armor to glitch through to the secret room. I was hoping that by grabbing either the cigars or the beer that the voice line would trigger, and skip to that part of the quest with dog meat, but nothing of the sort happened. I was at the very least able to fuel my Nuka-Cola addiction some more by robbing Kellogg of his quantums. If sneaking into Kellogg's house wouldn't work, I would just have to tackle the problem directly by cutting out the middleman. Arriving at Fort Hagen, I take a moment to dismantle the synths. Luckily, they still take bleed damage for whatever reason, so all is good. Now, from my Rad Scorpion run, I know that the elevator is still here, it's just blocked off by some boards, and with enough force, I could probably glitch through. Well, that's exactly what I tried with the power armor. I was able to get through one layer of the door, but there wasn't enough room to exit the power armor to get into the elevator itself. Granted, I was able to position myself in a way that I could press one of the buttons, but like it's another failsafe or something, I get hit with a notification telling me it has no power. Next attempt, I went downstairs and found the door that's boarded up that when you come here normally for the story would instead just be locked up on the other side by a chain. Same thing happens here, I can get through the boards with the glitch, but I can't make it far enough to take off the chain and proceed through. Finally, I decide to just phase through the nearby wall. If anything, I would fall through the void and spawn somewhere else in the fort. Luckily, that did not happen, but instead, I was able to get out of bounds and walk along some of the rubble that was out here with me, and then just walk back through the wall on the other side of where the elevator would normally leave you. From here, I can just proceed through the fort as you normally would. I was still worried that Kellogg wouldn't show up, as again, I haven't completed the necessary quests that come before this, but then, bam, Kellogg starts speaking over the intercom. And just like that, all of my hope was restored. The rest of the fort plays out as normal, only I take considerably longer to dismantle even the most basic of synths, for reasons that should be rather obvious by now. When I am face to face with Kellogg, I warn him about what is to come, but he just doesn't seem fazed by the idea. Well, the rapid firing paddle stuns him, and I think disarms him immediately, as he doesn't seem to be holding his revolver. Rather than focus him down, I just turn my attention to the synths and get them out of the way first. Once they're down, I turn my attention back to the Invisible Man. It seems I was right about the revolver, as he started using one of the synth's laser pistols instead, but it didn't matter to me, as like normal, he for some reason backed himself into a corner, which meant I could just plop myself down in front of him and let the balls cut loose. The bleed damage and stagger work just as well as they did on Swan, and before you know it, Kellogg has become the most embarrassed mercenary in all of the Commonwealth. Outside, the Pridwin appears, and back in Diamond City, Nick has finally recharged himself and is back to where he should be as well. From here, it's the memory den and jog to the glowing sea like usual. I did finally get to test out the paddle ball on a Deathclaw though. I know I have talked about how good it is at the staggering, but that's on full display here. I just keep circling him all the while, never letting go of the trigger, and he is barely able to get a successful swipe off. Like, the fight couldn't have got... Piss off, Ribbon. Sorry, the fight couldn't have went any smoother if I tried. Outside of taking 0 damage anyway. I then basically just repeat this with the one outside of Virgil's cave. Once the big green man sends me off to Green Tech, it occurs to me I am very close to level 17, meaning the next upgrade for the paddleball. While I am not going to grind out to level 41 for the final upgrades, I see no harm in building a few things in Sanctuary out of all of my junk to reach level 17 and increase my damage. What is the next upgrade, you ask? Well, it's none other than Fireball. Yeah, we finally did it. It is now a viable weapon. All it took was 17 levels and countless amounts of string. Sure, not having the stackable bleed anymore is a little sad, but the overall damage upgrade is much, much better. It still takes a little bit to beat the Courser, but it's definitely faster than it probably would have been. Maybe. With the chip in hand, I take it to the railroad, enlist their aid, and then help Deacon destroy the very things he swore to protect. After that, we build the teleporter, and it's the Institute/Railroad show until the end of the run. The only other part that was remotely difficult, by which I just mean time consuming, was defending the railroad from the Brotherhood's assault. The trick was to pick off the weaker ones first, and then only fight those in power armor one at a time where I could. After the Brotherhood went down in a blaze of mediocrity, I turned my gaze on the railroad. You didn't really think I was going to side with them, did you? With the Minutemen broken, channeling my inner Ocelot and double-crossing the railroad at the last possible second so that I could get the easy victory over them and the Brotherhood was by far the best ending to go for. The only slight hiccup in the plan was that Tinker Tom wasn't at the base for whatever reason whenever the culling was going down. Luckily, I found him not too far from the church and was able to add his body to the pile of his co-workers. I then give a sick father a little paddle on the head, which not only finished the game and proves that you cannot beat Fallout 4 with the paddle ball, but it also makes me enemies of the Institute, and with Preston's entourage still refusing to work, I have essentially created a busted save file with no working factions. Go me. Don't try this. Do not try this run. It took me longer than normal to even get the footage, and literally half of that was spent in Nuka World just trying to get away. The time may say I left Nuka World after 3 hours, but that's not accounting for the reset a few hours in, or the number of times I had to reload or retry certain sections, especially when all the glitches that kept cropping up in this run. Next week it's a new Vegas video. I know I've done a lot of those recently, but someone was kind enough to make a mod for me, and I wanted to try it for a video. Regardless, that's going to be on this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like, and you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe. Try to one of these videos every week. My name is Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.